Welcome to the Last American Vagabond. I have somebody joining me for a special show today for something that we are both very passionate about that has become sort of a contentious topic. Well, it's been a contentious topic for some time, but recently it's become a topic that's been connected, and rightly so, with the discussion of the Great Reset, the Internet of Things, and where this weird future is driving right now. But there's also been discussion that's come up about how all of it essentially is being used or could be or is dangerous enough to drive us to enslavement. But we're going to have a conversation about this today in regard to blockchain technology, cryptocurrency, and how there's a little more nuance here that needs to be discussed, but that there are genuine concerns. And to join me here on this conversation is somebody who's also very passionate about this, and that is Derrick Broze. Thank you for joining me today. How are you?
Hey, what's going on, brother? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to have to chat with you, man. And we haven't had you on in a while, so it's good to have you back. Now, this topic obviously is something that, they've followed my work for a long time. I'm sure people have followed your work for a long time and seen that it's something that we've written about, that we have discussed about how it could potentially shape the future, how it could be dangerous. And, it's a lot of discussion within that. So, what is it that made you suddenly want to have this conversation, and why is it so important to you today versus discussions that we've had in the past?
I guess the reason that it's important right now is it's been important, I'd say, for a while. I think I've felt this, and you've probably felt this. Can you hear me?
You get a little bit of feedback, but keep going.
Okay. I was going to say that, I think the reason people like you and I have been interested in crypto is because we see the positives. It doesn't mean we're blind to the, other side, the kind of downsides of crypto, the potential bad use for blockchain and cryptocurrency and other tools. That are also a part of the Great Reset, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. I think we've seen that going on. I can say personally for me, I started getting paid as a writer in Bitcoin in 2012. I started reporting on cryptocurrency in 2013, going to cryptocurrency conferences and interviewing folks in that space and trying to get to understand it better. And so I spent a lot of time in that space, and I do see benefits. I have been able to, get some small gains from holding crypto and use it to avoid using the banking system and all these great things. But I also do see the problems. And I guess it recently came up again, or started to kind of rear its head recently, because another researcher that I think both of our audiences know, Alison McDowell, who I will say I believe does and has done great research, as she started to develop her following, looking into social impact investments, social impact bonds, and how that ties to the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the role that blockchain plays in that, and digital currency, and so on. I've just noticed more and more concern about these topics. More and more people who are seeing her work and then who are turning around and saying like, well, these are really concerning, these are really scary. But unfortunately, I have noticed some lack of nuance, as you were saying, in the conversation, where some people, after looking at Alison's work, but don't have too good of an understanding of crypto or blockchain themselves, they sort of have these assumptions that we're going to talk about today, and maybe throw it all out, like, throw the baby out with the bathwater, like they say, and don't see the kind of complexities and the nuances here. So it's come about recently because Alison has become more vocal, and I will say, for me personally, started to kind of misrepresent, I'll say, the organization that I helped put together, just the concept, the Freedom Cell Network that we've talked about before, and calling it a blockchain project, and thus trying to turn people off of being involved with the project because of its apparent association with blockchain. But it's not a blockchain project and has nothing to do with blockchain. So it was sort of felt like an attack of misrepresenting my work. And then the conversation started to grow as more and more people want to hear about this. I did extend an invite to Alison to have this discussion on my show, or also as a part of the Greater Reset event that we're putting up on in May, to have this conversation in front of the larger global community. Unfortunately, she has declined and she's blocked me everywhere she can. And so the conversation between her and I is not going to continue. But I think, again, it's still an important conversation. And many people in our audiences and those in her audience have asked for this conversation. People have asked her to have a dialogue, and thus far she has refused to. But it's not just about Alison. I want to make that clear. There's other people who share these views and share these concerns as her. It's just, that kind of has been a little spark for this brewing discussion and debate that now seems to be, for Alison, she wants to draw a line, and people like her, they want to draw a line and say, look, if you like blockchain, if you use it, then you're supporting the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the Great Reset, and you don't support nature. There's this really kind of, I think, just black and white, really immature way.
If I could jump in real quick, and do me a favor, if you could, either headphones or just use your computer audio. It's a little scratchy. While you're doing that, I'll comment on this. Is that I think that it's important that there's nuance to any of these conversations. As you're saying, is that to take a Star Wars reference, like you don't deal in absolutes, right? That's not how these things are supposed to work. And to argue that it's either all nature or all this is unfair. I mean, it's in a way it is insulting to the possibilities that are there. But let me say this in general, is that I also, throughout this whole process, have become familiarized with cryptocurrency, blockchain technology, because of the work that we're in. And it was very early on recognized from the people I worked with back then, and in my opinion as well, was seen as a way that could be used to work around the control that was happening from the government, ways that we could circumvent the kind of tracking and control. And so obviously was something that we leaned into to a degree. Now, I want to be clear, there's plenty of things Allison's pointing out, or plenty of others. They're valid concerns. And that's what we're going to get into a little bit today, that there's a lot of things that are, and that, by the way, you and I have both pointed out in the past, things about how this technology could be used to control and create the very digital gulag that we're trying to avoid. But on that same note, I always make the same point, to make my point, mentality clear on this to start, is that I look at it in the same way like the internet, right? It's a tool. And if we hadn't used it and harnessed it the way we had, would we be able to fight back the way we are now? I think the analogy I used before was it's like a hammer, right? A hammer could be used to bash your head in, or it could be used to build a house, right? So it's about how you apply it. And, anyway, the point is that going forward, there are concerns, but there's also things that we can't let, we can't not use and utilize to achieve our ends in the same way, right? So let's start off with your concept of your understanding of this and why you think that there are positives to blockchain technology and how that can be used in the ways that are, I would argue, very important to fighting back against what they're building right now.
Sure. Can you hear me now without the?
It's a little low, but apologies out there, everybody. This just happened right when we went live, so no worries.
So do you want to start with the benefits of
blockchain? I'm gonna go ahead and jump in again, brother. If you can set something else up. We apologize, guys. We'll get this going one way or the other. It's important that we get the information out. But my opinion, then, to start off on that same concept, is that there are obvious benefits in regard to how we can utilize this technology to create a resistance to the very thing that they're building, right? At least that's my mentality. And there are a lot of projects that are utilizing blockchain, whether cryptocurrencies or not, that are being built in that exact way. Go ahead.
How about now?
Much better.
Okay, cool. So we're talking about the benefits first. I do have, just for those who are maybe concerned, this is just going to be a crypto love fest. I have a bunch of articles pulled up of the concerns about crypto and blockchain that we're going to get into. Well, we can start there, but I think we should start sort of foundationally, because I've noticed, man, and maybe you've come across this too, there are some people who still don't even know what blockchain is. That's the thing. Some of the conversations I'm having, we're talking about people who are on one side are like totally against blockchain and any use of it, and people on the other side who are maybe blind to blockchain use, and those of us who have kind of a spectrum. And then there are people who are just like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about, and I think that's important to address. So first off, a blockchain, which is the central technology that we're going to be talking about. This is what cryptocurrencies are built on, and lots of other tech is being built on top of and will be built on into the future for both positive and interesting and nefarious reasons that we're going to talk about. But a blockchain is essentially just a digital ledger, and the idea that it is a digital ledger that is immutable, that can't be changed after something has been imprinted on that blockchain. And the case that we're most familiar with, of course, is cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. So in that case, somebody sends a currency from one wallet to another wallet, and that's saved on the blockchain, and you can see all the transactions. There's no names attached to them, and the idea was that it would be private and anonymous and these sort of things. That was the original vision of Bitcoin. Now, of course, now many people know there are companies that have developed to study and analyze, like from a forensic standpoint, and try to track wallets, and that's definitely happening. But that's what blockchain is started with, and what we're going to talk about today is how the ways that, say, for example, the Davos class, the World Economic Forum, how they want to put your whole life on a blockchain. These are the concerns, the real concerns that people like Allison and others have had. I will also say that if you just look at my last couple articles for the Last American Vagabond, I did a 2-part piece on smart cities and the way that blockchains could be used in a negative way, even though there are people who see it in a really positive way. So just, to clear the air that we are covering the concerning side, we're covering all angles of this. So with blockchain, again, the original intention was that it was going to be a way for people to transact value, at least blockchain as it relates to crypto, that it was an immutable, uncensorable way for people to send money or value of anything, right? Documents, it could be anything. And the reason that is revolutionary is because prior to that, of course, we didn't have that ability to do it instantaneously, but also you had to go to MoneyGram or Western Union or the banks or some other third party. So at its best, the original idea of decentralized non-state money is that people could instantaneously, anonymously transact value from one part of the world to the other without any other third party involved. And that is a truly revolutionary idea because it cuts the banks out of the system. And I will say again, as somebody who's been and the government.
Right.
Exactly. And if you're smart about it, and this still exists, but it's getting harder, if you're smart about it, you can trade crypto and it's not going to be taxed. It's not going to be in the government's hands. That's why many of us see it as valuable, just to kind of add one note to that. So that's what blockchain is, right? So we've kind of established that's just super basic of what a blockchain is. And on top of that, you have different cryptocurrencies. Most of you are familiar with Bitcoin and Ethereum, but there are literally hundreds and thousands of coins out there now. Many of them are referred to as shit coins, or altcoins. But these are coins that are seen as maybe not serious projects and that just are out there for people to make money. So just to kind of understand the space. So you have thousands of people. Go ahead.
Real quick to the concept of the altcoins, what's important to understand there, what people tend to ignore, is the term cryptocurrency is applied across the board. But the reason they're called altcoins is because they're not really currencies. Whereas Ethereum, blockchain, these are currencies essentially. And these, like for instance, the altcoins are interesting because they're more so technologies, right? Something like Chainlink is about creating the smart ledgers, or Holochain is about creating a decentralized internet, right? And they're being funded in the same way. So it's just so much more broad than it's being laid out to be, and so a lot of these things are being built with the design of countering this kind of concept. So, go ahead. Sorry. I want to make sure people understand the different nuances.
Yeah. No, that's important to say. It's kind of the point I'm getting here is that we could go on and do a whole show just describing the crypto space. And we're not going to do that because this is not what today's show is about. But the point is for people who are maybe new to this to understand that when you hear crypto, it's not just Bitcoin and there's just one blockchain that's a Bitcoin blockchain. Everything's, there are, like you said, there's Ethereum and a lot of things are built on top of that. I definitely see some concerning things with their desire to work with the UN and retina scanning and biometrics and all kinds of scary things. But there are other projects that we'll talk about some of those maybe a little bit later. So that's kind of the crypto space that we're dealing with, right? So one of the main problems that I think we've run into, as I'm about to address some of the things that I think people like Allison and others get right, one of the main problems, though, is that I don't think we're all having an honest conversation. I don't think everybody upfront about their understanding of crypto. And maybe, I'm not going to claim to know why people do things, but it seems like people are misrepresenting the crypto space, and that could be purposefully true understanding, but either way, more and more people are getting confused, I think. And so I had somebody on Twitter say that open source is somehow connected to the Great Reset and the World Economic Forum. And just that, for one, that doesn't make any sense, but the concept of open source file sharing, all these kinds of things have been around a long, long time. And my point with saying that is that we need to be more, people really don't know much about crypto, or they only know this one area. Look at that area, but let's also be factual and realistic and honest about the space that we're dealing with.
Yeah, and what's important is,
and I guess with that, let's talk about the crazy.
Sorry, there's a little bit of delay here on. I can see it's cutting out. All I was going to add to that was that it's important to see that the very things we're talking about right there can be used exactly the way that we're discussing. That it's a tool. They can be equally as dangerous as they can be used in the same way. And so it's fair to say that there's danger there. But to pretend that you can't also be used the other way, that's the dishonest part of that. And whether that's intentional or not, that's not for us to even discuss, right? But it's interesting that is being overlooked by people, or I would argue even more so, that's what's confusing to a lot of people, is that they understand that side of it, but yet we're being told that this is the Great Reset, or even the open source point is frustrating because I've laughed with you about it. James Corbett would have something to say about that, right? Because this open source is a huge and important concept of how we can work around the system, and to pretend and just conflate that really large topic with just blockchain bad is sort of insultingly underrepresenting the situation. Anyway, please continue. I know you were off on another topic there and I jumped in.
No, you're good. You're making great points. And yeah, I just want to make sure that we come away from this conversation and people, for one, feel like we're talking about it fairly, that we're not just being dismissive of the points that the quote unquote other side, which I don't think that's the way it should be framed. Some people are, like I said, drawing lines in the sand, but that's not the way I've approached it. I've used crypto for years, but I've never felt like I had to admonish anybody who didn't use crypto, or things like that. So I think we all have to choose our own path, and the goal here is educating people, right? So people have more information.
Yeah, and that's the main clear point here is that arguing that there is negative aspects of this, and that's what we can get into here is that there are really clear dangers. Sorry, just so we're clear, there's a delay, and I'll try to keep ahead of that on there, but go ahead and jump into what you think are the real dangers here, because as again, I said, we've talked about this more than once, and it's very clear that this is 100% being used in ways to enslave us. So please let us know what you think about that.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to jump into it and show a couple of examples of areas that I think that people should be concerned about, and just a couple of links here. Can you see that one, Ryan?
Mm-hmm. Go right ahead.
Okay, cool. So Henri de Castries, some of you guys may know about this guy, especially if you're from France or in Europe, you may have heard of him. But this guy is the CEO and chairman of AXA, which is like an insurance firm, and they're connected to a lot of different companies, a lot of different big players, I guess you could say, up there in the 1%. This guy, so he's former chairman and CEO of AXA, chairman group. Obviously, that's like a pretty red flag there. Also has worked for HSBC, a lot of the Carnegie Endowment.
Bilderberg Group is what he was pointing to right there. It cut out when you said that. I just want to make sure that was clear for people. Go ahead.
Yeah, the Bilderberg Group right here. The Bilderberg Group, he's part of the German Council on Foreign Relations, all these sort of things. But what we're going to pay is I'm not sure if they have it listed on here, but so just so you know who he is and know his background, that's Henri de Castries. So here's another link that I pulled up as I was researching this, and it's about Blockstream. Ryan, you're probably familiar or heard of the company Blockstream in the crypto space. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is a couple of years old, but this is just an example of some of the concerns that I know that I've come across, and that I don't think we should just blindly dismiss or just say, well, that's just one guy or whatever. Again, we should have a kind of nuanced. So Blockstream is one of the biggest funders of Bitcoin Core, which is just the original Bitcoin. For those who are unaware, Bitcoin forked into several different, long story. And so Blockstream, one of the biggest funders of Bitcoin Core. And who owns Blockstream? Well, the insurance giant AXA that we were just talking about, and their CEO and chairman, now the former chairman, who was also a chairman of the Bilderberg Group, was this guy that I was just showing, Henri de Castries, right? So a guy that is working with the Carnegie Group, the Bilderberg Group, HSBC, kind of running up there with the 1%, owning an insurance giant company, as funder of one of the most important in the kind of mainstream Bitcoin space. That, I think, is just the beginning of signs that when you see those, we need to start kind of, okay, what does that mean? Does that mean we immediately have to dismiss the project? Should we just keep a skeptical eye? I would say be skeptical, right? Like not blindly accept these projects. Here's just more evidence, 2019 of, he's in one, but they talk about him. This is the same year that Eric Schmidt went to Bilderberg, and Peter Thiel of PayPal, all these who's. You had, intelligence, all the usual people, and you had the same guy. List him in there somewhere, I can't find it, but yeah, so they had him listed. So again, that's just one kind of example. I'll shut up for a second, Ryan. I have another, but if you want to say him in his role, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I'd like to point one thing out. Aside from this point, I just like to share an interesting tie-in to Carnegie, which I think is a relevant point to make clear. Whitney just wrote a great article. This one is entitled, "The World Economic Forum Warns of Cyber Attack Leading to Systemic Collapse of the Global Financial System." And this is also equally tied in with the concept of creating the digital world that we're basically discussing here. And what you'll find is it's a World Economic Forum and a Carnegie Endowment cyber policy. So it's interesting to see these connections with the very people that are tied in with these same, alarmingly mainstream crypto kind of concepts, we need to recognize there's a larger play here, right? Where they're simultaneously trying to build the world that will need these their digital currencies that they're going to be building while they're doing it sort of simultaneously, right? And so that is the danger right there. And this is why I argue that there's plenty of technology in this field that can be supported that goes against what I think they're trying to do. And that's the important nuance to understand. But it's clear that we can see that this is what's being built. And like things like we joked about, like XRP is one within the crypto community, which has kind of been identified as an obvious attempt by the banking industry to kind of shoehorn themselves into what's going on. And that's the concern right there, right? So please continue.
That is the concern. Like, and I'll just express this before I move on to the next article. Is as somebody who again got into the crypto space, not 2008, 2009, right away. The original intention of, I would say, most of the people was a solution to getting out of the banking system, the central banking system. It was a way to, as you said, Ryan, get away from governments and corporations and third parties and banks and that sort of thing. The concept has moved very far from that. I mean, it's always been that way. When I would go to report at crypto conferences, you would have the people there speaking, saying to make Bitcoin and crypto legitimate, we need to regulate the crypto space. And then you would have a few of the kind of crypto anarchists saying like, no, let's keep it free and decentralized and stuff like that. Well, the problem is over the last few years, because of these crypto booms and there could be some shady at the price or to just pump it so that people get into it. We'll never know that. We get more and more kind of average normie folks who are like, hey, I heard about this Bitcoin thing. We probably each have had family members finally come around and say, hey, can you set me up with a wallet, or where should I put some money in? And the only thing they can make money, they're not hearing, hey, did you hear about this new thing that could totally revolutionize the economic system and get you out of the bank's hands and free you? They just, oh, it's a new investment, it's a new stock, it's something like that. So I do think that the concept from what the original intention of many of the people in the early space. And so that's important to acknowledge that, because there still is that sentiment, but absolutely the overarching kind of image with crypto is like chasing the money, chasing the gains, which again, with gains, you can do good things, right? We can go out there and fund our projects. We can do powerful things with that. That can be argued. But if that's our only motive, I feel like it gets away from the original intention. And as I'm about to show, MasterCard and a lot of the same banks are already getting into the crypto space and buying up a lot of the companies. So it's like where we might feel like we're kind of revolutionary in some ways, but we're playing into the hands of some of the same people. That's where Allison and some of these folks are correct. So one example of that, I think a really big example, is this company I'm going to pull up called the Digital Currency Group, that I hadn't heard of till recently. But if you go to their website, just dcg.co, and you click on portfolio, it's a long list, right? And we're not going to have time to go through A through Z of all the companies that they have founded, bought, or acquired over time. And big names. Yeah. Let me see here. Some that are BitPay, obviously. Bitso is the largest Bitcoin exchange in Mexico. That's a Ripple gateway. Blockstream that I just mentioned, the guy from Blockstream, right, with the Bilderberg connections, these people own them, and we're going to talk about why that's an issue, right? There's the clear connections to MasterCard and some of those things. They even own Brave. Go find this on their own, but anybody who's in the crypto space will recognize companies. Coinbase, obviously huge. CoinDesk, which is a crypto news site. So you can see that this one group has not only crypto wallets and exchanges, but news sites where they can or promote whatever kind of projects that they want, which might be involved in their own portfolio, and the reader will be. So that's on its own kind of creepy, right? Then we look into who we are, who is behind this company. The CEO is this man named Barry Silbert, and their capital firm, Digital Currency Group, and they describe themselves as the epicenter of the Bitcoin and blockchain industry. And as I said, they've invested in all kinds of companies: Coinbase, Ledger, Ripple, Zcash. Now, that doesn't mean that those projects are all inherently, they're all like lost any good that they did just because of that investment or because of that ownership. But it is something that I think we should pay attention to. So that's a little bit about Barry Silbert. He comes from. Go ahead.
Thing just on that point is that we have to remember that whether or not they have like nefarious plans that like we're going to use this to take over the world or enslave you or whatever, which are valid concerns, recognize that just because these people are driving this in a direction that's counterintuitive to what this whole thing is about, that's concerning regardless. I mean, that's a new clear point that I want to make sure we understand that, whether they just have profit in mind, right? I feel that's counter to what this could be. And right, that's exactly just a surface level reason to not work alongside these people, let alone if they want to use it to build whatever they're trying to accomplish right now. So please continue.
Absolutely. You're right. Some people are just motivated by money. Some people get motivated by money, or they're motivated by whatever their profile. One other thing I will say in the crypto space before we cover, the thing about this Barry Silbert guy, who is the head of Digital Currency Group, is I've also seen this tendency by some folks in the crypto space, again, people who want crypto to be seen or blockchain to be seen as legitimate and not just something that, pot smoking crypto anarchists use or whatever. What'd you say?
Apologies. That was my thing playing in the background. Please continue.
Okay. Yeah. So what I was going to say though is that I noticed that some people in the space, they get interested in kind of being legitimate, right? So they want to get invited to the World Economic Forum. They want to get invited to the United Nations, because some people with good intentions, they believe that their blockchain projects or crypto projects could really save the world. Other people might have more nefarious purposes. But I mean, if you think about it, let's say that one of us had some new project we were launching, and we got invited to some big, glamorous kind of mainstream thing where we felt like, wow, I might get to share this project with a lot of rich people who might be able to fund me so that I can do good things. You might come into it with those sort of intentions without realizing that you're kind of stepping into the snake pit. It doesn't necessarily mean you're a part of the snake pit, but there are reasons to be concerned. So I just want to acknowledge that I think in some cases, it's just that these people think that they haven't done the research we've done, for one. They might not be aware of the Great Reset, and they think the World Economic Forum is a cool place to go speak at and to hang out with Elon Musk and, whoever else. So I want to acknowledge that. But the reason I say that is because, so we went from talking about Henry, the guy from AXA Insurance Company, who is head of one of the Bilderberg committee members, who was the CEO of Blockstream until recently. And Blockstream is owned by this company, Digital Currency Group. And their CEO, Barry Silbert, as you can see here, is listed as a member of the World Economic Forum, founder and CEO of Digital Currency Group, and all the different projects that he's been involved in. His work has been highlighted. Again, he spoke there. Does that mean he is, the right-hand man of the Great Reset agenda? I don't know for certain, but I definitely think, again, look, these projects are being pushed by the World Economic Forum. And even just the last 2 days, they actually just wrapped up their they had a 2-day conference about the digital governance. It was called the Digital Governance Summit. And what I'm showing here is just one of the talks, Global Economic and Health Outlook, right? And this is going over the ways that they think blockchain is going to change health. They talked about vaccines here, but they also talk about how it could help for pandemics, social safety nets. Right here, they talk about digital healthcare. And you can see that they had a guy from MasterCard speaking there, says that we need to build back in an inclusive and sustainable ways, right? That's the same old information. And they say the pandemic has shown the old healthcare systems were not good enough for this world. So we have to have digital healthcare, right? And so that's part of the whole agenda, right? And they're going to do that using blockchain. And there you can even see MasterCard, the same company that is invested in a lot of the blockchain crypto space companies that are tied to Digital Currency Group and others, are speaking and participating at the World Economic Forum events. So there are clear connections between this agenda that many of us are fighting and opposing. And I just wanted us to have that time to acknowledge. Now, we can maybe start, after hearing your thoughts, start getting to some of the positives, right? Because I think we've made it clear. We understand and fully acknowledge there are some concerning things in that space, while also not just painting somebody with, a scarlet letter just because they spoke at one place one time or because they're tied to, but acknowledging that there are those connections.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that's important. Like to use the example you showed of the guy from the Digital Currency Group, and is it possible that he is part of all of this and knows exactly what's happening? Sure. Or is it also possible that the group that is trying to make this happen simply tapped him because they can see what he has control of, right? That it's always more nuanced, and it's not as simple as it usually gets painted, and the guy, but what you just showed is concerning to me. I'm looking at it going, wow, okay, that guy has control over so many of these things. He is now he's part of this World Economic Forum agenda, at least what, he may believe he's changing the world for the better or not. And it shows you how much control is really there, and is being used against us. I mean, that's a fact. They are building this against us. And I just continue to feel that that's all the more reason why it should be harnessed in every way we can to push back against what's happening. I mean, here's a better way to frame it before we get into that is what are our alternatives? Right? I mean, look at it this way. Like I point with the internet, if we had chose not to engage in this because we said, oh, that's their tool, right? They're going to use that to enslave us. And we didn't touch the internet ever. We would be completely lost right now. I mean, think about the world would be like if they were using the internet to spread information and control everything, and we were just sitting here sending letters to each other. You know what I mean? That's the equivalent of where this would be going, where we're going to get to the next level. And we are left here at the internet age where they're on the other side. You know what I mean? And that's how I see this. Now, is there danger there? Of course there's danger. There's danger with using the dollar. There's danger with using any system they currently use. But it's about using it to push back. And I just can't stress that enough. And about using it in the best ways we can while knowing that there's risk there,
Absolutely. And I think that the other thing that's important to me is striving to remain, for me personally, and I think this should be important to anybody, striving to remain true to your principles while interacting and interfacing with this space. So everybody's going to make different decisions, and I'm not here to tell anybody or shame anybody for the choices, the cryptos they invest in, the coins they invest in, the wallets they use. But I will definitely say, and this is something I'm working on some videos about, there are ways to use crypto and generally to support blockchain that do not involve supporting the things that we just talked about, right? I mean, there's also ways to do it that don't put you in the kind of target of the government. People who are using things like Coinbase, I know that many of us have used it at one point or another, but it definitely it's a risk. And so everybody has to make their own decisions again, knowing that we know for sure Coinbase shares information with the IRS. So if you're seeking to do this in a private way with no KYC, know your customer, there are options to do that. There are ways to go about that, and again, maybe somebody does just see crypto as an investment and that's their choice to. I think that it's interesting. It's important to pay attention to the origins and the kind of the bigger picture, that if it just becomes another thing that we use, and if we do blindly embrace the tokenized future that some people are warning about, the smart city blockchain, blockchain controls every aspect of your life. And if you don't have enough water tokens that day, you might not get water. If your social credit score is not high, and all that stuff that we've been warning about for years, that future is waiting for the people who are going to walk into this without any skepticism. So that's one thing. I do believe that there's an effort to popularize blockchain and crypto so that people will then adopt it in the mainstream fashion, because most people just do whatever the mainstream is. If Bitcoin becomes a new currency, they'll just use it. And if that means they have to, deal with showing their eyeballs to get it or whatever, people will probably do it because people generally don't question things. But those of us who still strive and aim to use blockchain or crypto or support these kind of new cutting edge technologies like the Web3 that potentially could use blockchain to free us from internet censorship and, get us away from this World Wide Web prison that they've built, which, like you said, Ryan, has allowed us to do a lot of things, but now we're seeing that they ultimately control. And the real way is, instead of trying to say, government, come save us from your buddy, big tech, is to decentralize the internet completely, like the way it was meant to be and the way crypto is meant to be, so that we don't have to rely on their web to get it on. We don't have to rely on their money to transact value. That's the thing, I think, is that we should use the crypto space, acknowledge the concerns that are there. I personally look into new projects. Like, I don't just blindly say, like, oh, I'm going to invest in this coin. I want to look into the team. I want to look into, are they supporting United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? Are they speaking at the World Economic Forum? These are some kind of common things that you might want to look out for. There are other layers of connections, and that's going to be up to each individual. But I do think there is a way to remain principled and interact and interface with the crypto space. For me personally, I think that there's a lot of different cryptos out there, but I think that the one that provides value, as far as for me, value is, can I send it to you, Ryan, without anybody knowing, or at least very little people knowing, without a lot of work, and do it fast with very little to no fees? For me, that's Monero. Monero is, the one privacy coin that the government has an active bounty on to try to crack their encryption. The IRS has put out, I think, more than $500,000, maybe $750,000 for anybody who can crack that encryption. Now, again, you could say that's all a ploy to make it seem like it's this edgy one, but I don't see them promoting it. In fact, I don't see anybody really talk about it. I would think if that was their ploy, they would be telling people, oh, the drug dealers are all using Monero,
right,
or whatever.
Point that out, though, right? And that's the idea, is there's a level of inherent risk with anything you get involved with. They don't just blindly fall into it as what we're going to use to save ourselves. Involve yourself and consider that might be the case, right? I mean, that's with anything. I just think I don't understand why anybody would try to paint an entire concept as just bad, by default, when it's not like that. I'm trying to think of a good analogy, because it's not like we're talking about something as simple as, one object and it's just the same thing across the board. We're talking about an entire space here with just completely different things and entirely other sides of the planet in regard to what they can accomplish and what they're using and how they go forward. And so, that's what I don't understand, is why would that be the case, right? Why is it being painted that way? What's the point of that?
Yeah, the only thing I can really think of is if somebody is choosing to say, okay, well, there might be those nuances that you guys talk about, and yeah, sure, that exists. But for me, all blockchain is bad. I think that's the only, I don't agree with that, obviously, but I think that's the only thing I can see that somebody could try to paint it this way, is because what I believe Allison and others have said is, if you're using blockchain at all, you are helping further along the adoption of blockchain and the digital currency, cashless society. So even if you're doing it in ways that you deem as positive, you're still contributing to the use of it in these ways that will ultimately end up being bad, which I think is just silly.
Well, it is silly, and it's an oversimplification. And these same people are also using Odyssey and other platforms that currently use cryptocurrency. So there's a little bit of a contradiction there in general. But, it's the end of the day, we have to recognize that there are obvious ways that we can jump into this. I mean, look, TLAV wouldn't exist today if at that moment I didn't have Steam or whatever was happening when that was going on at the time, because that was what gave me the freedom to be able to build what I have, because it was something that was, going against it all, so does that make me a shill, right? Or does that make me somebody who's using it against the problem and fighting well back against the problem? You know what I mean? So it's interesting, because that's one of the arguments I keep seeing, is that, and maybe we can speak on your freedom cells, because it's the same kind of thing, that it's being kind of whitewashed, just kind of a broad, all of it. If you do it, you're a bad guy, right? If you're using Rockfin or one of these places, you're a shill, not just, that. So that's the same kind of false equivalency I see before all of this, where we talked about it as, if you make this argument, you're a shill for Russia or something like that. And it's going wait a minute, there's way more nuance to that discussion. That's what I keep seeing. So I just don't understand, I get the concern, but, maybe you can speak to the freedom cells discussion there, because that's kind of what happened, right?
Yeah, well, I want to mention before I do that, like you were saying, with benefiting from, I was around on Steemit as well. And at that time, there was a lot of alternative media that were on Steemit. And Steemit, for those who don't know, it's like a blogging site that has a crypto built into it. And many of us were able to, stay afloat for those months and, almost a year when the crypto space was booming. And we're actually making money for our content. Somebody's willing to pay us for all the work we're doing. Imagine that. That's great. And that allowed some of us to eat and pay rent and do things. And I'll add to that I'm in the process, as you know, Ryan, of looking for land and getting very close out here in Mexico. That land is going to be bought by my crypto gains. I'm going to cash out and pay in pesos, or if this person will take crypto, I'll do that too, and buy a piece of land that then I can use to get off the grid, and myself, not just me, but the community that we're trying to build, so that we can live in a lifestyle that is directly against, the things that this system is promoting. And I can't see how that is a bad thing if we're able to benefit. But I will also, again, add to that the caveat that, like I said, that we have to have our principles. We have to be critical thinking. I don't just blindly embrace any crypto project because I'm just seeing money and, think that, yeah, whatever, everything's all good. I want to know that the people involved in the projects, and some of which I know people personally who are involved in projects who I know are not pushing the Great Reset, who are trying to build decentralized tools. And I want to know the principles of those people. So that's important. But yeah, to the free.
Well, one quick thing before you say that is, what's the difference between that and the dollar discussion, right? The dollar is soaked in blood. The dollar, our fiat dollar, is what literally is what used to actually facilitate a lot of the crime that's committed by our government. And yet we could still take that dollar, that money, and build a sustainable community. Build, whatever, what's the term? Homestead or whatever, you know what I mean, for ourselves, and build and work away from it. So it's the same concept, right? So if it's bad to use cryptocurrency to do that because they're using it to build what they're doing, it's the same concept to say it's bad to use the dollar, right? So I don't, see what I'm saying? It just doesn't, the analogy is not sound. And I think that's quite clear. I think there's more to this discussion. So please continue.
Yeah, I think you're right that this conversation could and should continue to go on. I will just once again, in case there's a chance, extend that my door has always been open and the invite has always been open to Allison McDowell and to others who want to have this conversation and who are interested. I think it's unfortunate when people in our larger movements, despite the differences among us, I think we all care about peace, freedom, and truth. That in these larger movements, people who follow our work feel like they're being pulled in one direction when that's not the approach I'm trying to take at all. I understand that I have differences of opinion with certain people, and unless there's a real reason to, I don't come out just to say, hey, stop paying attention to that person because they have this other opinion or whatever, because I know we're aiming generally in the same direction. And that includes with this project here that I've told you about for Ryan, the Freedom Cell Network. And we recently passed 20,000 people, people all around the world who are organizing, who are connecting in real life. The whole goal of this website, people can sign up for free. They can create an account. They add their location to the map, not your home location, but your, say your park nearby or just your city. You can search to find cells. Like you can see here some featured cells in Guadalajara, Mexico. There's a crypto cell there. I'm sure some people don't like that. There's a hydroponic cell. There's Southern Californians, people all around the world, different topics, organizing. And the goal, though, is to form these groups and for people to connect in the real world, to use the maps, to find people locally. And like I said, we just passed 20,000 people. We're constantly growing through our Telegram cells, through the Freedom cells on the website, and hearing from people that they're getting to meet their neighbors, they're getting to grow food, they're learning solutions. It is not built on a blockchain. There is no, you have to use crypto or blockchain kind of agreement to use this or anything like that. But unfortunately, it has been misrepresented. And I hate to think that that would turn anybody away from using this tool as a way to find other people, because that's what we need now more than ever, is for people to connect in the real world. And because the thing about this, Ryan, we need to also talk about is that the World Economic Forum Great Reset agenda, a big part of their whole shtick is the fourth industrial revolution. And that is like, they want us to be, the Internet of Bodies, the Internet of Things. They want us to have digital twins and all these kind of crazy things where they don't want us to have face-to-face human interaction. That's the social distancing, the stay home, the wear the mask, all the stuff that we're seeing. So to us, Freedom Cells is a way to say, like, forget that. Let's meet in person. Let's organize in person. Let's not rely only on our digital tools. And that's also part of the initiative, like I mentioned, the Greater Reset activation, that we've invited Allison to come and have this discussion, not a debate, but a discussion just to go over these things. And I don't know if that'll be happening, but I do know that we will be highlighting lots of powerful tools. And I don't know if you're okay with me saying it, Ryan, but you're going to be speaking, and Whitney's going to be speaking, and the website is under construction right now. Just check back in a couple hours. We're updating some brand new things. But if anybody wants to find out more about that, thegreaterreset.org. And actually in 2 weeks, we're having another event that is directly related to what we're talking about here. And I advise anybody who's curious and who wants to learn more about this whole blockchain, digital technology space. I know there are some people who are taking this approach that it's an all or nothing, and they say this while they're on Facebook on their laptops, but I don't know. But, they kind of say like, no, if it's digital, then it's bad, because what if the power goes out? Then you're screwed. Or I see people saying, well, what if they start requiring vaccines for you to get your crypto, which to me is like, I don't think you understand how crypto exchanges work. But there's a lot of concerns, there's a lot of misunderstandings. But what we're trying to do is highlight, again, the positive aspects. So this conference, this summit is 2 days later this month. At the end of the month, it's called the Decentralized, Distributed, and Disruptive Technology Summit. And we're going to have just 2 days of people talking specifically about this. And my buddy John Bush is calling it the first decentralized evolution, to counter their fourth industrial revolution. That we're going to highlight not just blockchain and crypto projects, but people who are doing encrypted messaging apps, people who are working on alternative search engines, Web3 projects. Because to me, look, you can embrace the approach of no technology at all, and like you said, Ryan, well, you never would have found our work if you didn't use the internet. You never would have found a lot of the information you came across. So we can know that the US military helped build the internet. They helped build GPS, cell phones, more than likely Facebook, social media, and seed funded a lot of these companies. And we can choose to opt out of the ones that we have the opportunity and use better platforms. But we also should use the platforms that do exist. Again, it's up to each person to make their decision, to the degree that we can. So while this internet exists, I'm going to continue to use it to preach for a decentralized internet. And while crypto exists, I'm going to continue to talk about the true vision of crypto. And I'm only going to use it, to me, the most decentralized anarchist way to use crypto is if I'm sending you direct crypto, right, Ryan? Because that's just a peer-to-peer transaction. And not everybody has those opportunities, though. So they have to go to exchanges, and sometimes you get into KYC and that stuff. I would encourage everybody to start looking at decentralized exchanges. Again, I'm going to put out some videos about how to buy crypto without KYC, how to exchange it, because I do want people to use the tool while it's available. And if it gets you out of the banking system, I don't see how that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm completely with you. And I think that I look at it the same analogy with YouTube is that, we're all telling people to get the hell out of it, right? If you're using it, you should go somewhere else, but we're still going to put the content there because we still want to reach those people. It's the same concept here, and I think what you're saying there is the same concept. The overarching message here, obviously, is that obviously there are ways that this could hurt us, but if there's, like you're saying, is if it facilitates your progress away from the problem, even if in and of itself they're trying to get you more comfortable with it, as long as we're cognizant of that. It's about being self-responsibility. That's what freedom is all about. You know what I mean? So use these things to benefit the positives that we're trying to use, but at the same time, just be concerned about where it's going. And as you said, you extending the invitation, it'd be great if she came and spoke about the concerns that are there, because we agree with that. There are concerns, right? But it's important to recognize that there's a lot of people working within this field that are using it to benefit the work. I mean, Jason Burmis is a good example. Burmis, as he's pointed out, WACFin is the only reason he's still continuing to do this in funding all he's doing, because everything else censored him, removed him, and all this different stuff. And because of the cryptocurrency he's earning, it's able to keep his content going. Now you could argue that that's a dangerous situation, but I'm pretty sure Burmis is aware of the same problem and he's cognizant of that. So if it keeps his content going and he's continuing to use that platform to go, here are the dangers of blockchain technology, right? You see where this can go, and it's just about continuing to push back and fight back in every way that we can. And by the way, I am looking forward to speaking at the Greater Reset, because this is it's about showing them the counter way. It's the same concept of this whole conversation, right? Just because they're giving us this direction doesn't mean that there's not alternative directions using the same concept. It's important.
Absolutely. And I look forward to having you, man. And I'm glad we had this conversation because, like I said, I feel like it's been building. Like I've noticed even in, my audience, people who are very kind of adamant against blockchain and crypto, but I also noticed that their understanding of it doesn't have too much depth to it. And that's not like it attacking anybody. It's a big space that I can only claim to, understand still at, I would say, an intermediate level after spending 8 years in and around it and interviewing people. But I definitely can understand that it's not just one monolithic thing that some people have tried to paint it like. So I hope more people will look into projects if they're interested, but also this is the other thing I want to say is, even if you still, after all this, have no interest in crypto and blockchain, you should still, without a doubt, pursue alternative currencies outside of the government and banks' hands, whether that means some local paper currency, building a barter network or a trade network, or building your own local digital currency, or whatever it may be. The point is, we can't just keep trying to, part of what we do is educating people, but we also have to be pulling out of these systems if we ever hope to get away from them. The banks aren't just going to disappear, and they probably won't disappear if they can control and co-opt the crypto space like they're obviously attempting to do. But if we keep striving to get away from them and to have honest, free money, free ways to exchange value without incurring debt, without benefiting some third party that has nothing to do with it, then perhaps we will get there. But if we just choose to, well, I don't like crypto, but I'm going to keep using the Federal Reserve note, we need to pursue solutions. So that's all I got to say, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. Well put. And I think, to end on the same concept. I mean, look, if it wasn't for what I do today, being this, I would be wildly the other direction. Like, I am all about getting an older car and an old, not smart TV. I'm the other direction, if not no TV, right? I mean, it's about going the other direction because of how problematic these things are. But at the same time, you recognize that you cannot wage an efficient, effective war back without using the same concept, can you make a bunch of flyers and send them out? Yeah, and you'll have an effect. You'll reach a few people, but you can use the same concept and send it out, and you'll reach 100,000 people. There's no way to misunderstand what that shows us. Yes, we're utilizing tools that could be damaging, but at the same time, we're waking up tens of thousands more people to see that it is a problem. That seems pretty clear to me. But all we can do is go forward and make the choices we can with integrity, with honesty, and try to be open to other people's perspectives. I think that is an absolutely paramount concept today. So thank you so much for being here, Derrick. And I'm sure we're going to have this conversation again, because it seems to be obviously a very important one going into the, hopefully, the great reset that doesn't happen. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, thank you, brother. And we'll see you and hopefully everybody else at the greater reset.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Looking forward to it. All right. Well, everybody out there, as always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.